We talked about it. It was a fun what if, but it looks like the talks are back on. Disney might be buying up some of Fox's assets and therefore completing certain groups of superheroes. Yeah, so we talked about it recently in the news that Disney was in talks to buy 21st Century Fox's assets. This, of course, does not include Fox News or other assets. This is specifically more on the entertainment side. And we had talked, what would happen if they could fully control Marvel's superheroes? Well, that might actually be happening. According to the Wall Street Journal, people, quote, familiar with this situation say the Walt Disney Company has returned to talks with 21st Century Fox, with Comcast, to purchase the company's assets. So if they could do this, this would be a great boon to anyone who loves the Fantastic Four and wants to see a good movie from them for once. But also with that, we could see the X-Men, the other heroes that they have the rights to right now.
Yeah, no, the comic book nerd in me is rejoicing. I'll be the first one to admit it, but I feel like I'm gonna be contrarian here in a lot of people's opinion.
You can do it.
There's a lot to be said for the industry if Disney gets the properties to Fox.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, and so recently there was a moment with the LA Times and Disney. I'm sure you guys covered it here, where Disney essentially said that they felt that there was a hit piece out by the LA Times, and so they were barring their journalists from press screenings, essentially crippling the press, like infringing on the outlet's ability to
provide editorial content.
Exactly. Yeah, and to give criticism, and this is part of their traffic. Web traffic for a review site on a Friday when there's new movies coming out is huge. I mean, obviously I work for Rotten Tomatoes, like that's part of the things that we do. And so it affects it, and seeing early screenings is a part of what we're allowed to do. So this is the type of situation where when Disney becomes one of the biggest players in town, not everybody's the LA Times. And the smaller things happen often with smaller outlets where they get bullied around. I'm not saying myself, we have a great relationship with Disney and love you, Disney. But it could happen. It could happen. And it could be for something as simple as them doing their job as an outlet to report on entertainment news. Also look at this. Every position that's at Fox, there is a similar, if not identical, position at Disney. And when they absorb within each other, they all become part of the mouse house, as we like to say. And some of the folks will probably remain on, but a lot of them won't. This is the reality of corporate mergers, no matter what your industry. And I think people need to understand that this is not necessarily great for our industry if you're looking to have unique voices and unique storytelling and different things. What Fox did with Deadpool was because they were Fox. And they could. Will Disney continue that trend? Hopefully, but they have a model that they apply with Disney, Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm. Yeah, they apply that same model to all their brands, and I don't really see them changing it up too much now that they just got these new fun Fox characters. You bring excellent points to this, and I don't think I should even consider talking about the rest of this before we really touch on this more. So to flesh it out a little bit more, a while back, the Los Angeles Times posted an investigative piece saying that Disney had done perhaps some unfair business practices with the city of Anaheim in expanding their Disneyland Resort park. And Disney didn't refute the investigative piece, but they said they said it had inaccuracies, but they wouldn't be specific on which inaccuracies. They didn't straight up tell us what was wrong and why it was wrong and provide any kind of rebuttal. And instead they decided that the people from a different branch of the LA Times, the film criticism branch, film editorial portion. Yes, they were not going to be allowed to go. And thankfully, other outlets, other critics stood up and said, this isn't right. You can't do this. We're going to boycott you until you fix this. And it got to the point where they could no longer be considered for certain awards because of the amount of critics that had dropped out. And that's something that has to be protected. We can't, when we're looking at perhaps, even telecom mergers, even that kind of thing. When you do that, you put one voice as the largest, the loudest voice. And from that, there's very little room for dissent, and there's very little room for anyone who may have a different vision or a directly contrary vision, even. So
when you do that, it may make the whole scape smaller and weaker as a whole.
I mean, it's a fantasy thing, though. Obviously, I want to see an X-Men Civil Wars type storyline. Like, as a geek in me, there was a huge portion of the Civil War storyline that was deleted because they don't have possession of the X-Men characters.
Oh, that's right.
You know what I mean? And the whole no new mutants that we did in X-Men, a lot of that stuff couldn't go through past what we've seen already. And there's a lot of really interesting things from comics that we don't get to explore in live action because of the rights. And I mean, do you know the reason why we don't have a standalone Hulk is because Universal still owns the rights to the Hulk for standalone, even though they can use them in Marvel.
I was wondering why they were using so much Hulk footage.
Yes.
I went to the Universal Studios this past weekend, and they were using it constantly, and I thought,
because they own the rights for it.
Why are you doing this?
Because it's not your movie, but it is their character. Love you, Hulk, by the way. Anyway, but you know what I'm saying? So it's of course, it's great to fantasize about these characters and these stories, but there's a big reality behind movie making, and this is what's great is I want movies to continue. I want this trajectory with comic book films and everything to keep going. It's not necessarily gonna happen if we only have one game in town. Because what happens if Disney decides, okay, we're never gonna touch these characters again? Then they're gone.
Pretty much, yeah, it is a double-edged sword. I mean, we do have Marvel doing these great leaps where it's just like we're getting these stories we would have never gotten before. Like Guardians of the Galaxy wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the MCU, if it weren't for Iron Man, if it weren't for this, if it weren't for that. But still, it can't be the only one out there.
Guardians is a great example. Guardians was because they didn't really have a good property to feature, and they had to use that one. We probably wouldn't have a Guardians movie if they would have owned all the other stuff.
And it's been revitalized because of that. Audience, where do you want this to go? Do you want Disney to take over the 21st Century Fox assets? Please let us know on our Facebook and our Twitter.